All right, it looks like we're live. Good afternoon, everyone. I am McKenna Jordan. I'm the owner of Murder by the Book bookstore in Houston, Texas. And it is my absolute pleasure to be joined today by John Grisham. Hi, John, how are you?
Hi, McKenna. Good seeing you again. How you doing?
I'm doing all right. We're 6 months into this, 7 months into this, but the pleasure of it has been, this is my third time to chat with you. So that's pretty fantastic.
Good. It's always fun.
Yeah. So for those of you who need an introduction, which I don't think any of us need to know much more about John Grisham than we do, but he's the author of 35 novels, one work of nonfiction, a collection of stories, and 7 novels for young readers. Why don't we dive into the new book, A Time for Mercy? Now, we have signed copies of this. If you place an order online, we will assume that it is for a signed copy. And I understand there's a minor misprint issue with a lot of the books out there, but we have checked all of our books. There are no printing issues. Signed copies are available for purchase. If you have any questions for John Grisham, put them in the comments, and one of my staff members is going to be texting them to me. So if you see me look at my phone, I'm not being rude. I'm getting questions from you guys so I can ask them to John. So we're here to talk about A Time for Mercy. Can you give me a brief rundown about this book?
Yeah, it's back to the courtroom for Jake Brigance back in Clanton, Mississippi, in Ford County, a fictional place where we first met him 31 years ago in A Time to Kill. Hang on, my phone's ringing. Turn that on. And Jake is back with another sensational murder case. In the first chapter, you know who killed who, so there's no mystery here. A 16-year-old kid named Drew Gamble kills his mother's boyfriend after a bad night of a lot of bad behavior, and the kid thought that the family was in danger, and he got his hands on a gun and sadly pulled the trigger. The man he killed was a deputy sheriff, and so it's a dead cop in a small town, and no lawyer wants to take that case. And back when I practiced law, and where Jake still practices law, the counties were too small to hire a full-time public defender. So when these sensational cases happen, bad criminal cases, the local judges appoint local lawyers to step in and defend. And a lot of times we don't want the cases. And Jake sure did not want this case. But his judge, Judge Noose from A Time to Kill, leaned on him heavily, and Jake finally came to the defense. And when he did, it was a very unpopular thing to do, and the town really turned against Jake.
Poor broke Jake.
he gets broker every book, doesn't he?
Oh, no. Yeah, he seems to. So as a writer, how does it feel revisiting him? Is it like writing an old friend?
Exactly like that. It's going home. It's going to where I'm from. That's my, neck of the woods. That's my history, culture, society, customs. You write about what you know. And for 10 years, I was a lot like Jake, practicing law in a small town and struggling and scrambling to make a buck and worried about the future. Living a pretty happy life, but still dreaming of the big courtroom drama. And I wanted to be a big time courtroom lawyer. And that's Jake's dream, with big fees, big cases, big fees, big verdicts. And that's what lawyers sometimes dream of. And so, those are the people I've written about now in 3 novels over 30 years. And even when I'm not writing about them, I think about them, and I'm always thinking about the next Ford County story with Jake. It took 24 years from A Time to Kill to Sycamore Road to bring Jake back, and that was too long. When he came back with Sycamore Row, we were kind of surprised at how popular he was, because of, by then, A Time to Kill had sold, many, many copies. The movie was very popular. Matthew did a great job with the movie, and he became Jake. And so once we realized that Jake was a really popular guy, I decided not to wait 24 years to bring him back again. The sooner the better. But I had to have a story, and it all goes back to the story. And it took me a while to come up with one for A Time for Mercy.
Well, I would say that this story has more parallels to A Time to Kill also, because you have a case, obviously, that's legally wrong, but morally ambiguous. And I was wondering, do you get more fulfillment writing about these nuanced characters as opposed to kind of right and wrong?
Oh, sure. Yeah. The more complicated, the better. And a lot of legal issues are complicated. There's no black and white. There are so many gray areas in the law, and they're irresistible to explore in novels. And that's what I enjoy doing. Especially enjoy doing it with Jake in that neck of the woods.
Yeah. So one of the reviews that I read, kind of prepping for this, mentioned, and I think it's dead accurate, the quiet goodness of the residents. And another review mentioned that this book was a perfect break from the polarized state of the country, with it being a book relying more on shades of gray in Canton as opposed to those good versus evil. Everyone is well-intentioned. Was that your intent writing it, to just kind of have a solid, good community represented?
Not really. I mean, it's an accurate portrayal of those small towns, and there are far more good people than bad people. I wrote the book. I started in January because I start every year in January, and I do a lot of writing in January, February, and March because there's not much else going on, and I try to finish by July. And then COVID hit, and so suddenly I was stuck at home and couldn't go anywhere. And the book got thicker and thicker, and I think my goal with the book, with any book, is primarily to entertain. When I start the next book, I tell myself every time, I will tell myself, slow down and try to make this the best book you've ever written. So I still have that in front of me. I still have that drive to get better, and but also to entertain. And it's great now. I mean, I've read so many books in the past 7 months because, and book sales have been, remarkably strong. Even with all the bookstores closing and disruptions and distribution, all that, the publishing has done okay compared to a lot of other segments of the economy. And because people are stuck at home and they're buying books and reading. I certainly have. I've read a lot, and it's a nice break. Initially, when COVID hit in mid-March, it was very distracting and frightening, and I found it hard to concentrate on a good book. But with time, I've been able to just disappear into a good book in another world with a good writer, and that's what I try to do as a writer, is just take the reader somewhere else for 2 or 3 days.
Well, and I think the point of those reviews were that this book is a wonderful escape right now. It's so nice to revisit a friendly face with Jake, for sure. Like people love him. I love him. As a matter of fact, we were so excited about doing this talk with you that my husband and I rewatched the movie because it's been a million years. I will say it's a little scary how relevant it still is, but moving past that, when you come back to Jake, do you have some kind of guide? Like, did you write a Bible on Jake and Canton, or did you just know them all? They're in your head.
I'm too lazy for that, and it really it became a problem in writing this book because I wasn't sure. I couldn't remember all the other stuff I'd written about Ford County and its people in A Time to Kill and in Sycamore Road. Those are thick books. There's a lot of people there, a lot of places, a lot of country churches and country stores. And there's this big lake in Ford County, Lake Chatula. And after 3 books, I've moved that lake all over the county. I just, I've lost track of where the lake is. And so, yeah, and late in the process, I really don't like to go back and read my stuff. I just never have been able. I'm too focused on the next book. I don't want to, I'm tired of, when I finish a book, I'm tired of it because I pack a lot into 6 months. And so I just was not able to go back and read any of it. But however, because I didn't want to make a horrible mistake, I sat down one night with a glass of wine and A Time to Kill, and I scanned every page of A Time to Kill, all 480 or whatever it is, whatever edition I happen to have, looking for discrepancies and looking for mistakes. And it was not any fun. It was not any fun. It was a chore. But I found 2 glaring mistakes that I had made in A Time for Mercy. Had to go, and I had time to go back and fix them. But I mean, that's what I have to do, is just sit down with, I have this kids series going, Theodore Boone. I've written 7 of those books, and it's all about Theodore Boone, who's a 13-year-old kid lawyer. And after about the 4th book, I started getting these angry letters from 10-year-old kids who were finding mistakes in my first 4 books, from book 5 to book 2 or whatever. And they would point them out. They were obvious mistakes. I'd just been too lazy to do my research. And so I thought, oh, boy, I can't, when you write a series or sequels or whatever, you got to remember the earlier stuff you wrote. And I learned that lesson very well with A Time for Mercy.
Well, it sounds like a chore, but I'm glad you did it, because I'm sure you just saved yourself a lot of emails.
I get letters. And I get letters. People love to find mistakes.
Oh, they do.
In the Guardians, the story, there's a scene that takes place around Kingsport, Tennessee, kind of up in the Smoky Mountains in far, far eastern Tennessee, in the hills and mountains. And I grew up just outside of Memphis, on the western end of Tennessee, so I know that area fairly well. And for some reason, I don't know why I did this, I don't know why I didn't catch it, but I referred to Kingsport as being in western Tennessee. I was off by 300 miles, okay? Glaring mistake, and I should have caught it. I made the mistake. The letters are still pouring in from people who live in Kingsport, so I'm sorry. We've actually gone back and corrected it. So I get letters from there are mistakes, and I make a lot of mistakes.
Well, I think you're human. Everyone who's human is going to do that. So I have a question kind of about the legal aspect to the book. So many, in my opinion, people starting out writing legal thrillers make the mistake of putting too much procedure in them, and it bogs down. Do you have some kind of rule or trick for making sure that your pacing keeps going? They're good thrillers while adding in the procedure?
There's no trick to it. I learned, I wrote a book called The Runaway Jury, which is about a trial. The whole book is just about in the courtroom. And it's a civil case. And almost all of those cases are very dull. They go on for a long time. There are moments of drama, but not many. And it was a real challenge to liven up the courtroom scenes. And that's true in any book. You can't spend a lot of time in court, even with a courtroom drama, because it's just not that exciting. There are, again, flourishes of emotion and things like that, and compelling witnesses, but it's a real struggle that writers have in making the scenes move along in court. And I just work on, I try to keep it brief while being thorough. And I'm very conscious of the fact that this could come off as quite dull to the reader. And the mistake that the mistake that a lot of lawyers make when they try fiction, they really want to impress you with how much they know. And they put in all these procedural gadgets and gizmos that nobody cares about. And they put in all this background information about their complex trials, and they just go nowhere. They're too dense, and most of them don't work. I
mean, exactly. I completely agree with that. I think it's also a fine line for people who write historical fiction, because you inherently do so much research about your setting. You come across all these tidbits that the author feels like they need to put it all in, and then it actually bogs down the plot. So I will say, I'm sure the reason you've been on the bestseller list so many times is that balance of not bogging down the reader. And then on those bad days of writing, how do you get past it?
Well, there are far more good days than bad days, because my routine is that I'll write from about 7 to about 11. And after 4 hours of pretty much nonstop writing, I have to stop and get away from it. I have to just go somewhere and, go for a hike or work out or something, just to do something physical to clear up the brain. So when I start back the next morning, I read very, very slowly what I wrote the day before. And I do a lot of cleaning up, a lot of editing, a lot of changing. But that's really gets you back into the rhythm of the story. And so it's rare that I can't just keep going. I may have to stop and go research something or whatever, but there aren't too many slow days. And I have a deadline it's self-imposed, but once I promise Doubleday a manuscript by July 1st, they put everything else into production and get ready for it. So, I'm always on time. I take a lot of pride in that. I'm never more than a week late, or sometimes a week early, but I know that deadline is there. You ask about pacing. A lot of it goes back to, I want each book. My goal with each book is to write 100,000 words, about 400 pages, because I don't like to write thick books. I don't like to read them. I mean, a book has got to be very special if it's 800 pages before I'm going to tackle it, because I can read 3 other books while I read that one. But I mean, I guess it's over time. The Time to Kill is a very long book. The Time for Mercy is probably the longest book I've written. Now that I've said, I don't like to go long, but the stories are more complicated. The relationships are more layered and deeper, and so the books get to be a little bit longer.
Yeah. I also, as a bookstore owner, it's got to be something remarkable for me to pick up something that's 800 pages, because reading is my business, and for the same reason, I can get through 3 in the same amount of time.
Yeah.
All right. So, as a writer, what do you have a favorite motive to explore?
Motive,
like lust or money or.
It's rarely lust. I have trouble writing about sex. Men don't write good sex. And my wife, I wrote a sex scene one time, and my wife fell out on the floor laughing when she read it. So she said, just let the female writers do this. There was a sex scene in Camino Island where our 2 principal characters had been sort of flirting, and it was about time for them to hop into bed, finally do the deed. And once I got them there, it was kind of fun getting them there. But once they were, in the bed, I thought to myself, what am I supposed to do now? Describe body parts and, dialogue? I just couldn't do it. So they went to bed and woke up the next morning. No, I mean, I explore a lot of things. Money. Sure, money's a great topic. The Firm was all about, money. And I think I explore justice or lack of it more than anything else, or injustice. Yeah. That's my bread and butter.
All right, so I'm going to take a little break and just mention that if you're tuning in late here on Facebook, when this video is over, you can just come back to the same place and watch it from the beginning. And we'll also get it uploaded on YouTube later today and post it on social media so you can share it to people that way. So I have a little segment now on reading, because that's what everyone asks questions about. So I was wondering, what books did you read in your formative years, and did you always want to be a writer?
We read a lot of books. When I was a kid, I had, two brothers and two sisters and a lot of kids, and um, we moved around a lot, and it was a wonderful childhood. But we were kind of always the new kids in town, and anytime we moved, my mom took us straight to the library, and we could judge the quality of life in any small town by how many books you were allowed to check out one week. It was 2 was terrible, 5 was wonderful. And so we would get our pile of library books and go back home and read them and pass them around. My mom would read to us. She didn't like television. She kept us away from the television a lot. Even this is early 1960s. And she just didn't believe in television much. And so we grew up with piles of books all over the house. I can't remember the kids' books, children's books. I remember discovering when I was 11, I discovered a series called the Chip Hilton the Chip Hilton series. And it was written by a coach, all about sports. Chip Hilton was a high school All-American in all 3 sports, basketball, football, and baseball. I mean, he was great, okay? And an old coach named Claire B wrote the series. And I've always been a sports nut. And so I couldn't play any of them, but I love to watch them. And, live in person and in television. So I'm always watching sports. And I wiped out, I think there were 15 books in the series. And we were living in a small town of Ripley, Mississippi. And the library had all 15. And I just waded through them. A lot of Hardy Boys. Mark Twain, when I was pretty young, I read Tom Sawyer, then read Huck Finn. And that began a lifelong love for Mark Twain. In high school, I don't remember reading a whole lot, but I had the benefit of a couple of really, really strong high school English teachers who forced us to read. When I was a senior, we started with Beowulf and Chaucer, and we got the whole gamut,
all the way through, yeah,
all the way through. And we had to, and she was a tough teacher. We had to learn it, or you would flunk the test. So by the time I got to college, it was a piece of cake because I'd been taught so well in high school. In college, I don't remember what I read. I have once law school started, all reading stopped. Just all pleasure reading went out the window. But I had my best friend in law school, for some reason, discovered the crime novels of John D. McDonnell, especially the Travis McGee series. And so he gave me an old paperback, and I read it. And for a couple of years in law school, our goal was to try to collect in cheap used paperbacks the entire Travis McGee series and pass them around. And we did. I think we got almost all of them, 23 or 24 of the Travis McGee books. And that's my one pleasurable reading experience from law school. And when I became a lawyer, it was hard to find time to read fiction for fun. I never thought about being a writer.
Really?
Did not dream of being a writer as a kid. I didn't study writing as a student. It just came later in life when I was 30 years old, and I was inspired by a story I heard or something I saw in a courtroom, and I created this fictional big courtroom drama, the kind of case I wanted as a lawyer, the big murder trial with everybody there, and I get a big verdict, I'm the hero, and all the clients come flooding to me. It never worked out that way for me or for Jake. I had this idea for a big courtroom book, and that's what motivated me to start writing A Time to Kill.
All right, well, that was a great answer. I could listen to you talk about books all day. So before people from the audience ask, is there any TV or movie news?
Big news yesterday. It was released in Hollywood on one of the Hollywood newspapers or magazines or online somewhere. Either, what are those magazines? There's Hollywood Reporter and there's another one.
Variety.
Right. I don't know. Thank you, Variety. I'm supposed to know that. This is really it's a fun story. I don't know if it's going to happen, but about 6 months ago, we got a phone call from a guy who wanted to buy and adapt for film a feature movie, my baseball book, Calico Joe.
Oh.
And we had already been through one director who bought it and then didn't do anything, and the option expired. And that's my life these days, expired options. And but this guy was serious about it. He wanted to do Calico Joe. Well, the person was Bob Dylan, and you don't think of Bob Dylan as being a movie producer. Yeah. And I've yet to meet him, have not talked to him, but he's a serious guy. Well, the story that was released yesterday was that he has hooked up with, I'm drawing a blank. This is awful. George Clooney and his partner, Grant Heslov, and they are going to write, produce, and direct Calico Joe. So it was a story about Bob Dylan, George Clooney, and me all in the same paragraph for Calico Joe. So that came out yesterday. Don't get excited. Do not believe it until they start shooting, because these days nothing gets filmed. I have not had a feature film in 15 years, and it's not because we have not been trying. Everything is for sale, and I'm easy to deal with. The truth is, I want all of my books adapted into wonderful movies or TV series because we all enjoy them. And as you know, as a bookseller, a good movie or a good TV series will sell a lot of books.
Yeah.
And so we're always, I think we have about 4 or 5 TV deals, Rooster Bar. There's a movie deal for The Testament, several in the works, but nothing to be filmed this year.
Well, and as if it's not hard enough, filming with the pandemic is all but non-existent. So who knows? Well, fingers crossed, though, for Calico Joe. It's got some big names attached. I feel like they can make something happen.
We hope so. We're hoping.
All right. So I think it's about time that I take some questions from the audience. Stephen was wondering, is it true that Macaulay Culkin was considered for the role of Mark Sway in The Client? If so, how would the film be different with him in it?
That's a throwback to 30 years ago. When was Home Alone? That was about 1990, I think, and Macaulay got really, really popular. No, he was not considered, because when I met Joel Schumacher in Memphis in about 1993, the book had just been published. A production company bought it for Joel to direct, and Joel and I met for dinner at the Peabody Hotel in Memphis with Renee, my wife. Had a wonderful dinner. And at that time, Macaulay Culkin was being considered for every kid movie. And Joel said, we are not going to call Macaulay Culkin. We're not going to call him. I said, we're going a different direction. I said, I don't cast these movies for the most part. So that they're not considered.
All right, well, that answers that. So I know that you write every morning, but Debbie had a pretty specific question about it. Do you still get up early Sunday mornings to write before church, like with The Time to Kill? If not, how's your process changed?
I have not written on a Sunday in a long time, unless there's, unless I'm really down to the deadline. I may work a little bit on Sunday. We still enjoy going to church and spending time with the family. We have long Sunday lunches, and we try our best to keep the Sabbath holy and obey all the commandments. It's a day of rest for us. It's a total, for the most part, it's a total day of rest. And I don't watch ball games. I don't watch, we're outdoors doing something or trying to hang out with friends and family. I never did write much on Sunday with A Time to Kill. When I started writing, I never made any money as a lawyer, but my office was really busy, primarily because I could not say no to people who needed help. So I had a bunch of people in the office who couldn't pay me, but they all were in trouble or needed help. And that was my law practice. And so it was busy. There was just a lot of stuff going on. I was also in the state legislature, in Mississippi, and that required January, February, and March to be out of town at the state capitol during the week, not on weekends. And so, and Renee and I were having a family, and life was good. It was fun. It was hectic. I had no time to write. I couldn't squeeze in my day. There was just no time to write, because once the office opened, the phone was ringing, and I got into this brutal habit that I would never try now. Waking up at 5 every morning, and hustling to the law office, which was 5 minutes away. And I had this strict rule. I had to sit down at the desk with the current legal pad I was writing on, with the first cup of coffee, and write the first word at 5:30. I just made myself do that. And I would often write an hour or two before the secretary showed up and the phone started, or before I had to go to court. I can recall being in court several times at 9 o'clock, pretty well exhausted because I'd been up early and my mind was mush. But it became a real habit, and I realized that's the only time I could do it. And I also realized the pages were really piling up. So it was important to do it every day. And that habit carried over. It took 3 years to write Time to Kill. And then I went straight into the firm. And I just same schedule, writing the firm. And that book took 2 years. And so when it came out in 91, everything changed for us. But I forgot what your question was. I'm just talking.
The question was, did you still write Sunday mornings, which you answered?
No, I do not. Thank you.
All right. Let's see. So have you ever been tempted to do any crossovers between the adult books and the Theodore Boone books? And in a related question, is there going to be another Theodore Boone book?
The answer to the second question is yes. I would like to write Theo books for a long time. I've written 7 in the past 10 years. I do worry, though, about being able to sustain the series with enough adventures for Theo. Theo is not going to age. He's going to be 13 forever. And so I hope there are more. I'm not sure if I understand what you're asking about a crossover.
Would Theodore Boone ever appear in, say, Jake Bergance's world? Or someone else's? Yeah,
someone else's. I've never thought about that. But I'm not going to forget about it. I'll keep thinking about it. It may work.
It's funny. Harlan Coben writes the Myron Bolitar books, but Myron's nephew Mickey is the protagonist for the kids. And so obviously that was an inherent spin. Maybe Theodore Boone can pop up sometime in an adult one.
That might be a wonderful idea. I'm not going to forget that.
Well, I'm going to credit it rightfully. It's from John, who is from Murder by the Book, our event coordinator. He said that is his question. So there you go. So George was wondering, he said, in a recent interview, you mentioned you like sports. Are there any recent historical or biographical sports books that you've read recently?
Historical or biographical? There was a really good biography of Yogi Berra that came out this summer called Yogi that I enjoyed. Historical. I can't remember an historical book about baseball in the past few years. There was a great book came out this year called The History of Baseball in 10 Pitches. And the writer, Tyler Kempner, I think is his name. I think the book is back here, but I'm not going to turn around and try to find it. He took the history of baseball from the very early days and talked about the pitches that they threw, mainly fastball or slow ball or whatever. And as the game evolved, somebody figured out how to make it curve. And he takes you through the whole history of baseball with these pitches that these pitchers, the ball changed, the strategy changed. Somebody invented the knuckleball, but it's just a wonderful delightful history of the game. I guess it is historical, but I really enjoyed that book.
And related question, what is the favorite thing you've read this year?
You know, I've read so much. When the pandemic started, I'm going to have a project, okay, a reading project, and it was to read all 6 novels written by Walker Percy. And I read 4 pretty fast, got kind of bogged down in number 5. I have since realized that the pandemic is not going to be over anytime soon. So I have plenty of time, but I'm going to get those 6 books finished. I can't think of a favorite. Some of the ones I have enjoyed. Scott Turow came out this year with The Last Trial. I really like Scott's work. James Lee Burke came out with A Perfect Cathedral. I'm a James Lee Burke fan. Some nonfiction that I've enjoyed. I read probably half nonfiction, half fiction. There's a British guy named Ben McIntyre who writes these really fun books about World War II and espionage and spies. And it's just, they're so well done. He's well researched, but he's a good writer, great writer. And he's very enjoyable to read. I've been kind of binging on those. He's got a new one out called Agent Sonia. Came out last week, I think, and I bought it. Haven't read it yet, but he comes to mind. So I've done a lot of reading.
Yeah, we like those Ben McIntyre books here also. So I think I'm going to, I understand you have another a radio interview with a deadline. I think I'm going to go ahead and wrap up. Apologies to anyone whose questions we didn't get to. I always like to wrap up my interviews with a few questions from the Proust questionnaire. We did a few in April when we chatted. I've got a few different ones today, but they're not, I don't think they're terribly horrible. Before we move on to the Proust questionnaire, I do want to mention to those of you watching, we'll be back. We have a lot of these virtual events. We'd love to see you on here. A couple of note, we'll be back on here October 25th with Lee Child, Andrew Grant being moderated by Hank Phillippe Ryan for the new Jack Reacher book. And then we'll also be back with Michael Connelly and Alistair Burke in November. I know there's a lot of those author spans probably watching today. Those are ticketed events, so make sure to check out the website for information. So as far as the Proust questionnaire goes, we have we'll do 2 or 3 questions and then let you go. What is your greatest extravagance?
An airplane.
That would be top of my list. That sounds fabulous. What do you consider your greatest achievement?
Raising 2 wonderful kids.
What do you most value in your friends?
Humor.
What is the current state of your mind?
At ease.
And what is your idea of perfect happiness? We did this one last time, but it's my favorite question to end on.
Are you talking about a feeling, an emotion, a mood, or are you talking about a beautiful dinner with my wife?
Well, it could be the same thing, but I'm talking about what situation would make you think I'm perfectly content?
You know what? I've had several of those moments this summer. Our daughter lives in Raleigh, and she has our 2 grandkids. They're little boys, 4 little girls, 2. And they have been on the farm a lot this summer because she's kept them in quarantine. And they live in the city, and we live on a big farm with 1,000 acres and plenty of room to go do anything, fish or hike or ride horses or whatever. So she's had them on the farm. And there have been some late afternoons sitting on the porch. We have a lot of porches at our house. It's an old house that every time we add on, we add porches. With my kids, good glass of wine, and the grandkids are running around playing. And I've thought to myself, this is perfect contentment.
Well, that's exactly the answer I was looking for. I wish you many more of those days. Thank you to everyone for tuning in to watch this interview today. I'd like to repeat that we have signed copies of Time for Mercy available. It's wonderful. It's a great distraction, wonderful read for right now in particular. And it was wonderful visiting with Jake again. John, it's been a pleasure. I hope to chat with you for every one of your books coming out in the future. It's just a delight. Have a wonderful day. And thank you so much.
Thank you, McKenna. My pleasure. See you next time.
All right. Bye.